Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
I'm Jack Battles, and I am the director of the Genesee County Friend of the Court. And I'd like to speak to you about our experience with the on-base system. Electronic content management, I guess, would be the best way to put it. I became the director of the Friend of the Court after about 20 years in practice. And I have to tell you that in my practice, I was a sole practitioner. I didn't even use email. So the first day of the Friend of the Court, and I turned on my computer and I realized I already had about 50 emails. I had to go get my assistant director to come and help me with them. He had about 37 years of experience in the Friend of the Court, and so we were not the most dynamic duo when it came to technology. I tell you that because our experience with electronic content management came about almost at the same time. I took the job in September 1st of 2006. I spent the first 30 to 45 days looking things over to see what we could improve, and I found there was a lot we could improve. Genesee County had pretty much taken an approach to the Friend of the Court like they took an approach to building an automobile. And that is, when the order came in, this person dealt with it, they did whatever they did, it went to another person, they did something else, and then it went to a bookkeeper that entered it, then it went to somebody to enforce it, and on we went. And so after reviewing what was going on, and after also, I can tell you, I reviewed some of the questions that were asked of potential interview candidates before I got there. One of the questions basically stated this: the Friend of the Court is so busy that you will never be caught up. If you get this job, you can never do this job. And it just seemed self-defeating to me. That October, I think I went up to the Michigan Family Support Council meeting. I met Mike Lightliner. You met Mike. At that point, we started talking about coming into the 21st century. I think I had talked to Mike that Genesee County still had typists. No one did their own word processing. We would send it up to a typist. And it was one of those things that was just inconceivable. What you're looking at here is a sample of our file room. We had about 64,000 files back in 2006. Our file room took up half of the basement of the administration building. I didn't compute the square footage, but it's incredible. And the files were organized in an alphabetical setting. So if you went down the aisle for B, and this might be the B aisle, I don't know, the Brown versus Brown, you would have maybe a whole segment that you'd have to look through. It was incredible. And people would check files out by putting a little red card in. Sometimes they'd sign the red card so you knew where the file was. Sometimes they wouldn't. There were probably anywhere from 3 to 5 emails a day, urgent emails going out saying, I have to be in court, I have to get this report written, where's the file, anybody seen the file? And it was a very difficult system. Sometimes we'd take people over for arraignment. We wouldn't have a file, we wouldn't have the information except what we could get off MICES, and the judges weren't too happy with us at that point. Oh, you jumped out of me. No, you're good. So files just mysteriously disappeared. There were a number of times where we would actually have to go and try and reconstruct the file from the clerk's office. We are not in the same building as the courthouse, so that caused us problems in and of itself, and it would be a process to go over there. We had rolling carts, wheeled carts that people would push over with files, with orders, with other documents that would go in between the Friend of the Court's office and the courthouse, the clerk's office. Those carts would be pushed in July. They'd also be pushed in January through the sludge and whatnot. It would take anywhere from 2 weeks to 3 weeks once you submitted an order to the court to get that order signed, to get it back in the outbox, to get back down to the clerk's office, to go into the cart, to come back over to the Friend of the Court. So we were extremely delayed in just getting our orders and being able to put them onto the system. You know, the Friend of the Court, as we all know, collects money. I mean, we try to do it the right way, and we try to help people, of course, but we're funded heavily because we collect money, and we were putting ourselves at a severe disadvantage. About the same time in Genesee County, there was the precursor of the economic crisis that was going to hit. At one point, we had almost 80,000 GM jobs. I think back in the day, we were probably the model for the entire country because we could send out 50,000 IWOs We got money in without doing a whole lot, and that was in the process of changing. We did not do well to change with that economic issue that was being created. We continued to send IWOs out that never got answered. People were not working at General Motors anymore. They might be working at the party store or somewhere else, and we were not efficiently finding those people. So after speaking with Mike, I came back to the office, and I got with the controller, and I said, you know, there is a better way. There has to be a better way. Even I understand we can do this. And come to find out that the Board of Commissioners in Genesee County, for their State of the County address in 2006, had actually said electronic content management was going to be a goal. We were going to go forward with electronic content management. There had been a study done several years before that. I think it involved the clerk's office, where there was a bill or a cost for a programmed system of about $4 million. And so when I talked to Mike and we started kicking some numbers around, we then got back to the controller and said, wait a minute, these costs are not what you think they are. Everybody was all excited about doing it at $4 million. After talking to Mike, I think the initial buy-in for all 4 departments that went in phase 2, we were the lead departments, friend of the court, the prosecuting attorney family support division, probate court, and the domestic division of the circuit clerk's office. I think the cost was somewhere around $340,000 if I remember right. We added on a couple of modules that pushed it up. But the fact being, the cost came down to almost 10% or less than 10% of what the initial study was 3 or 4 years earlier. When the controller heard that, he was excited about it. And so we started our steering committee where the IT director, the purchasing director, myself, and the controller started weekly meetings. And we started to talk about what could we do? What did we need to do? And eventually we got board approval for a document management system. The process for preparing an RFP happened almost immediately after that. We started to put together ideas that what did we want in the system? And what we tried to do, at least in the front of the court, was to take a look at not how we were doing business, but how did we want to do business? Did we want this compartmentalized assembly line process, or did we want something better than that? And so everything was starting to kind of gel at the same time. Our controller thought that it would be beneficial to take a look at this on a county-wide basis. And his plan was that we would get all 33 department heads together and that we would have a department head meeting and we would come up with a consensus as to which way to go. I can tell you that the meeting happened. Several meetings happened. Consensus did not. It was clear immediately that you had 4 departments that wanted to go forward. You had probably half of the other departments that said they wanted to go forward, but they weren't going to commit to going forward until we hired a consultant to tell them what they needed to do or what they needed to have to go forward. And then we had the other half of the departments that didn't want any part of electronic content management at all at that point. So after a long struggle, we did get an RFP out, and it was approved by the board. I think they supported it, and they have supported it since then with other modules that we've purchased. And the evaluation process began. I can tell you that 9 vendors submitted a response to our RFP. Of those, we picked 4 to have final consideration. And the friend of the court was kind of spearheading this. So their test was, when they came in, was they needed to hook up with MICES. And if you could do that, we figured you were a pretty good company. So the original plan was we were going to scrape some screens off MICES and we were going to do some really neat stuff. Only 2 of the vendors could give the connectivity with MICES that we were looking for. ImageSoft being one and the second choice being the other one. I can let anybody who wants to know that later. We did have, of the other 2 vendors, I can tell you that one, when we said, okay, here's your test, you're going to have to hook up with MICES, they immediately said, MICES? They didn't know what we were talking about. So they took themselves out of the equation, and we were down to 3. The other outfit was a Canadian firm that came in. I think we gave them 3 opportunities where they came in to give us this presentation, and there was some technical hiccup every time. They could never give us the connectivity that we were looking at, and so we were actually down to 2. We also started talking to, and I have to be careful because one of my bosses is in here, but we also started talking to the judges, at least in family court, that iSign was coming. They call it TrueSign now, but at the time it was iSign. And to really give us the functionality of the workflow that we wanted, to get away from that hand cart and to get away from the paper that was flowing, we needed the iSign. And so I attended numerous judges' meetings. I think the judge's belief was that if we got the system, they would have to use iSign. We have 2 of them. Mike's one of them that is very good at the systems and technology. We also have another one. And then the other 3 kind of struggled with it. But right now, everyone is iSigning orders. We also began to take a look at not just what we wanted, but we took a look at what did other people do. And the counties that went before us, St. Clair was probably the first one with the friend of the court. And they had done a very good...
Sorry. It was going forward a little bit.
St. Clair had done a very good job of organizing their files. And they organized them to the point where they actually pushed the shred button on their files. When we went over to St. Clair for a site visit, I remember the friend taking me in the back room and saying, okay, here's our file room. And there in the corner was a banker's box half full of files. They had shredded everything else. And they had no problems whatsoever with doing that. We have not, I can tell you, we've been on it since February of 2009. We have not shredded front of the court files.
Who shredded their files?
St. Clair County.
St. Clair.
St. Clair County.
I think we're a lot of ours are shredded too.
Are they? You're from
Washtenaw.
Washtenaw.
Court
St.
Services still has theirs, but I think FOC's shredded.
St. Clair interpreted the court rules to indicate or to believe that my understanding is the clerk's file was the official file for the county. The friend of the court file was their own file, and therefore they were able to shred. And so that's how they proceeded on it.
Okay, we got room for one thing.
I got a match.
We also, about that time, started taking a look at really what document management could do for us. Really, what were the workflows that we could do? And we started to look at every function, every responsibility, every task in the front of the court. And we would eliminate functions, or we would combine functions. And what it did is it gave us the ability to rethink how it's been done. We got rid of our typists, we got rid of our mail carts, we got rid of a lot of the other functions. Even the necessary functions that we have, like modifications or reviews, some people call them, even the necessary functions that we have, we were able to become more efficient to reduce employees. Our modification unit, I think, had 10 employees back in 2006. We're currently at 7 employees in that department. We used to have a 6 to 8 month backlog on modifications, and we're currently doing them in 45 to 60 days, depending on the judge it's assigned to. But we could not have done that if we wouldn't have identified those functions. Okay? There were numerous people in the front of the court. There was 104 people when I started. And there were numerous people that after 6 months or even after 12 months, I didn't know what they did. I mean, they sat in the corner. I knew they did something with bench warrants. Every time I went up there, maybe they had solitaire on their computer. But I did not know what they did. And by going into this system, it forced me to know. It forced me to know what they did and how that could be combined or made better, more efficient, more service-oriented for our clients. And we're going to get into a few more of those things in a minute. We also started to prepare a document list. Anybody, I know some people are here from the friend of the court, Washtenaw? IT. The friend of the court loves their documents, okay? Typically, they're one of the largest departments in a county. Ours was 104. When we put our document list together, it was about just short of 600 documents. And then And then we started to go through the documents and say, okay, why do we have 5 of these documents that the referees figured that they would fill out? The reason was we had 5 referees and they were all doing it a different way. We started then to say, if we're going to start coding these things, if we're going to start this process, we're going to get it down to a manageable level. And we were able to do that. It's not without some discussion, I can tell you that. But your document list, when you get ready to go, is anybody looking at just going, or is everybody here on? Because I don't want to be redundant. You're looking at it?
Going.
I think the 2 crucial parts, okay, when you get into really looking at a workflow system is not, and I equate it to my house. When I built my house and they came out and they poured the foundation, I worried about what kind of concrete and how much sand was in it. You don't need to worry about that with a document management program. Okay, those things will sort themselves out. What you have to figure out is, how big do you want it? What are you going to do with it? What's your floor plan? Okay? If you don't put the work in up front, if you don't identify those documents that you want to maintain and code and that's going to direct your workflow, you're missing the boat. You can correct it down the road, but you're going to have some severe issues, learning experiences as you go along. You also need to identify those functions I was telling you about. These, in my mind, these are the 2 most critical parts to putting a system together. I'm not an IT guy. I could barely use email when I came over to the friend of the court. But I can tell you that the friend of the court directed the electronic content management for our county. Okay? I was also very fortunate, and I can give a shout out to him now, to some of our people that were very, very good with technology. One is Christy Osanasic to my left here, and I'm sorry I didn't introduce her earlier. She's one of our supervisors, and she's currently the supervisor of our technology department within the Friend of the Court. We also have Linda Kernow, who was very instrumental in using the system. I mentioned modifications. She's the supervisor of modification that we were able to address that. So we had an individual in the Friend of the Court named Charles Spring, who the guy never turned off. I can tell you he was there from the first time I talked to Mike to all the way through the process putting up RFP together. When our consultant that we hired ran out of money because we had only allocated so much money, it was Chuck that put together the RFP. When we got the proposals, it was Chuck and I who called and verified from other references whether they were reputable, what they could do and what they couldn't do. And I was very fortunate to have those people. At the same time, a true find was Katrina Fellenbaum, and you might have seen her. She's here today, and she's presented at other conferences or summits. She came from the Friend of the Court, and she was a great help in becoming our permanent system administrator for document management. Have I mentioned Todd yet? Is Todd in here? Todd, wave your hand. Todd is got to have the most patience of anybody in this system. Him and Steve were great. They kept answering questions, our what-if questions. What if we changed this? What if we didn't have that document? They were very good to work with. So I'm getting off the... Go back just a second, would you please?
Okay.
So we've tried to weed out the redundant and outdated functions. We then created a test environment. The reason the test environment was important for us is we were working in partnership with ImageSoft. I can tell you that Genesee County did not have any IT involvement in this project, except that our director of IT was on our steering committee. And they also put the servers on. But other than that, as far as the programming, as far as how this thing was going to roll, there was no IT involvement until after implementation, when we went into more of a maintenance role. So it was important for us to have a test environment where we could test out these workflows as they were being created. Okay.
These are the users that we identified how we were going
Yeah.
to.
When we looked at the functions, we tried to reduce it down to those users that were necessary, and this is a sample list of the users. So when we put our workflows together, this is how we would identify them. If they went from the administrative assistant to the accountant, for instance, that's how we would route them. This is just our forms, right?
This is just a sample of our 15-page document catalog that shows all of our 408 codes and our routes for each of those documents.
So I think we're currently at about 350, 370 in
Almost
documents.
400.
Almost 400 now. If you don't keep track of your document types, they will creep up on you. People will create new documents, they get into the system, and pretty soon you'll be right back up to the 600 or so that we had initially. A big part, and Genesee County was a little bit different on this too. We had sent out RFPs for backscanning services, and our plan was to backscan at least 18 years so that we could use current electronic data instead of the paper files. We received quotes, I think, between $60,000 and $75,000 to do that for our county. It was my feeling at the time that we didn't know enough. We were still developing our document catalogs. I wanted to make sure that we had all documents accounted for, and so I decided that we would do our own purge process. And so we started the tedious job. I think we assigned 5 individuals initially to do the purge. And as it says, we would remove the paper clips, staples, and Post-it notes. We also purged all envelopes. We purged all tax-sensitive information. We purged all duplicates. And when it was all said and done, we had about 5 years purged by the time we went live. So we were going back to 2001 at that point. We estimated that we purged about 1.5 million images out of those files before we started the scanning process, which it just tells you how many of those things, people when they work a file, if they didn't know what to do with it, they threw it in the file. You don't need those envelopes, you don't need those Post-its, you really don't need the tax information that you used 2 years ago to do a modification, because it's all going to change as you go forward. So that was our first process, and at the time we were still identifying document types. Christy had done a MISES for, you or Katrina? Katrina, I guess, had done a query for docket labels from MISES so that we could simply slap a label on and it would read it with the barcode, right?
Correct.
With the barcode, and it would tell us that that is the case number that we're dealing with and that is the document type. Now when St. Clair did their documents, I think they put them all into 1 or 2 categories. We used 3. We used orders, court documents as one category. We used financials, and anything that wasn't a motion or a court order or a financial was a miscellaneous. So all of our backscanning is in 3 different categories. Okay, as we went forward, we used the individual document type so that we could pull back. If I wanted to know how many motions for show cause, we can do that. I mean, if I need to know it for a week or a month, we simply get a report that tells us that. But it won't go backwards because we didn't scan the individual document types going backward. As I say, we backscanned 5 years to the go live date. It was important to me because of the stage we were at with our awareness of what the technology could do. It was important to me that everyone be aware of what the process was. And so it wasn't just the 5 people that I had originally assigned to do the purge and the backscanning. Eventually, everyone, that's okay. Eventually, everyone went down and purged, including myself. We put them in teams. I think I went down there 4 or 5 times. I think it was good humor for a lot of the people that knew a little more than I did about what we were purging. But it was important that we move in that direction. Keep in mind that we had kind of stagnated with any technology whatsoever. I think back in the day, I was at the last conference, and I think Phil, he's here, made some comments about MISES, which I'll just agree with without saying anything about. But Genesee County had refused to get on the MISES system, and they really only did it once we were threatened with sanctions. I think they were talking about taking away all of our federal funding for the Friend of the Court, which was about $6.5 million a year. So we had kind of put ourselves in this position, or this mentality of, the way we did things was great. You couldn't possibly do anything better than what we were doing from 1957 to 2003. I mean, we were still caught in that mode. And so it was important to me that everybody know what we're doing with these document types and how these documents are going to flow as we move forward. We've attempted to continue the back scan. We've been better at it at certain periods than others. I can tell you that Genesee County here in 2008, 2009 felt the crunch of the economy probably worse than any other county in the state. At that time, I think our general fund revenues went from about 115 million down to 75 million. Our office got reduced from 104 down to 82. And so it was very difficult to have the back scanning done. What I did see though, when we went through that process of downsizing, no caseworkers were reduced and no supervisors were reduced. All of those 22 reductions were taken in our clerical units. And Genesee County is one of those unique counties where everyone in the front of the court is unionized, except for me, and our referees. So, you know, we had a lot of discussions with our unions about we're really not doing this to reduce people, but we do have an economic issue that we're going to deal with. And at that time, we were being told by our commissioners, you will take a 20% or a 30% reduction in your funding. And luckily, we got ahead of the curve with the implementation of the on-base system. Okay, go live, February 9th, 2009. Go live went live for 4 departments, as I indicated, the friend of the court, the family division of the prosecutor's office, the clerk's office, and probate court. We had been having these steering committee meetings for probably a year or a little more at that point. Every week in my office, we'd get together and try and figure out where we were going to go with it. Probate court had kind of fallen off the map and coming to those steering committee meetings. And they hadn't been there in probably 3 months. We went live February 9th. I think probate court came back to the meeting somewhere around May and asked, when are we going to go live with this? They were using it as a repository. We were already live. It was already in the system. And it was just kind of a funny story. At that time, because of our being novices at this, I expected a lot of problems. I expected that when we turned this system on, we would have to keep a paper system kind of parallel to this and it would float. I can tell you we had no problems whatsoever. It was quiet. It was dead quiet on anybody having any issues whatsoever. We have had occasions, maybe 10 or 12 times, to make improvements to the system, but those are improvements that we designed in after the fact with additional information. Our documents, and again, we were lucky when we went live because our clerk's office was on. Most of the documents that the friend of the court has are shared with the clerk's office. You know, in my mind, of those of you that are thinking of going on, those are the 2 departments that really make a lot of sense to go first. Because the commonality of the documents, okay, the number of the documents, and the friend of the court does receive federal funding to get this party started. It's gonna pay for about 2/3, as we all know, of your 4D activity. So if you're just thinking of getting started, I would suggest that you certainly include those 2 departments. Family support, the DPDS cases, the establishment of paternity on unwed parents, that is also, I think, a necessary element. I wouldn't say it has to go first, but it does go hand in hand with what we do. Christy put this picture together, and I kind of laughed at it because this is our scanning station. When we started, I thought we're in 3 floors in the administration building, and we also have offices over at the courthouse just for the referees. And I had thought we would have 4 points of entry for paper documents, not including the clerk's office automatically sending them over. But when I looked at this file, I kind of laughed because this is our office for the scanner, and this was a really bad day for him. Typically there's 2 stacks in his office. What papers that need to be scanned that came in the mail or over the counter, and papers that are already scanned. And I don't know what Titus was doing this day.
He was opening the mail from a weekend and a Monday.
So I don't know why we're...
Just to show you that this is where the paper stops.
I can tell you that when we scan, we put it in to the system. We do file the paper into the paper file, but we just put it in there. We don't put it in any sequence. We don't keep orders separate. We don't do any of those things. The other thing that we do, if there's an active case, let's say there's a post-judgment motion that gets filed on a 1992 case for some reason. we scan that file in. So it'll always be there once we start using it. It's only the ones that haven't been touched that don't get scanned in. Okay. As I said, we went from 104 to 82 employees. That was not the result of OnBase. That was the result of the economy. What OnBase did is allow us to continue to do what we were doing, only better. I told you about the modifications where we now have 7 people doing what 10 used to do. The time frame came down from 6 to 8 months down to 45 to 60 days. We saw similar improvements in almost every area of the Friend of the Court. Our appointments, we used to do appointments Tuesday through Friday, 4 days a week, 8 hours a day. We now do them 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Wednesdays. It used to take you somewhere between 6 to 8 weeks to get an appointment with your caseworker. If you called today, if I couldn't get you in today, I'll get you in on Tuesday or Wednesday. There's rare that it's more than a week that you would have to wait to come into to see your caseworker. Can I have you talk about the benchmark process, please?
Sure. I just want to take a drink.
None.
I don't know if any of you have heard about our benchmark process, but we took a process that takes from 2 weeks down to 1 day. Of course, that's if everybody's sitting at their station signing their documents. We also, along with that, Todd built us a bench warrant cabinet that auto folders all of our documents. So when they come in, if we want to dismiss a warrant, basically with a click of a task, it dismisses it in OnBase, and then it also shoots over a copy to our clerk's office that they dismiss it on their end. So the bench warrants, the reason it took so long, the 2-week process is what they would do, just like Jack said, is take them over 3 days a week, put them in the judge's box, go back, hopefully they don't get lost, bring them back, then we go and file them at the clerk's, then they bring them back and they put them on MICES, then they go on the lien. It just was a very long process. I was a caseworker while this used to go on, and we'd send it up for a lien, and they're filing complaints left and right, and we're telling them we've put it on lien, we've sent it to lien. So this has been a valuable tool for us. Did I miss anything?
No, that's good.
Okay.
We talked about order processing, auto-assigning cases. That's just the Friend of the Court had an individual embedded into the clerk's office to do 4D filings. So whether they came from the prosecutor as on a DPDS case or whether it was some Friend of the Court activity, they would do that filing. But change is good. I can tell you when we went live, everybody was freaking out before we went live. I can tell you if you came into the Friend of the Court and you ask any of our 82 employees, would you go back to paper? You would be shouted out of the office. They do a remarkable job. The other thing I'm going to tell you about change is, at least with this system, you keep track of the work. Back in the day, we self-reported every piece of work that you did. So if you sent out an income withholding notice, you told me that you sent out 20 income holding notices, you would log it in for the day and the week. When we went live, where people were telling me they sent 20 a day, they were probably sending 7 or 8 a day. I really don't think they were cheating. What it was, though, is this just gives you better information. When you run your reports, I know where the bottleneck is on orders getting entered. I know where there's an issue with someone who maybe is not the right fit for that job. And so it's given us the ability to kind of shift people to their strengths as opposed to trying to put these square pegs in round holes.
Did you want to tell them how many retired?
Oh, out of the 22 that left, we had 3 layoffs. Everyone else retired. Those were the individuals that probably had the 37 years and just couldn't quite grasp a new beginning. So we started out with a much younger supervisory group because I think 6 out of the 7 supervisors retired and a number of our employees. We're currently working with the state, with MICES and Accenture, to try and make this system more compatible with MICES. There are certain screens that we scrape information off MICES, and so what we're trying to do is when those screens change, as the state's prone to do from time to time, we're just trying to make consistent footers so we can identify what those documents are so we don't have to individually categorize those documents. The FTP transmission of central print. What's that?
The central print is where we send our documents to get mailed out to the parties versus us having to manually do them. And what they do is every day we receive a package of an individual form, the motion for show cause. Then we have to scan it in and index it. And what we're hoping they'll allow us to do is to have it sent over securely and have it automatically indexed once it comes into the system. We're also, as MISES sends out new releases, we work with ImageSoft and make sure that any of their screens that we scrape information from hasn't changed. Mike, did you want to mention about the Adobe toolbar?
Well, we actually have created a tool that allows our friend of the court customers to take the documents that are ready to be printed from MISES and actually automatically print them in, because what we can do with our tool is we can actually read the header and footer information that typically has the docket ID, page numbering schemas, and other information that we can use to index. So no longer do the friend of the court customers have to either use virtual print or print the document and scan it. They can automatically ingest it. We do something very similar for prosecutors, because the family support unit's documents tend to be blobs of document. So it could be 5 documents with different page endings, and that's what they have to work with. So we could actually, with the tool, even read the page numbers so that we can separate those documents using this tool. It's all called iDoc Archive.
Thank you.
This is just a sample of what Mike's referring to in making those fields in a stated place. We're running behind.
Okay.
Where do we go from here? Future plans. We're currently looking at phase 3, which would include the circuit court administrator's office. We're looking at the rest of the clerk's office, being the civil criminal division of it. We're looking at the rest of the prosecutor's office, being the criminal division, and district court. That's going to be the next chunk that gets taken off. Our board has been very supportive. 2 years ago, they set aside a large sum of money to get this project going, and I don't know why, but they just hadn't gotten it going to this point. But our board still fully supports moving forward. We're also looking at e-filing possibilities, and I was happy to hear Judge Rogers and some of the marks that you're going into, or some of the fields you're going into, because it's going to make it easier for the rest of us. Electronically submitting FOC forms from our website and automatically indexing into OnBase would be a huge benefit to us to do so. We're also looking at a phase 4 after that, and that phase 4 is going to be the sheriff's department. Site visit dates. I asked Christy to put together 2 site visits for anyone who would want to come to Genesee County and actually see the system work. Those dates are either July 19th or July 25th. Or on the next screen, you're going to see Christy. Don't go yet. You're going to see Christy's number, and you can call her, and we will try and accommodate you however we can. This really is the future, guys. I mean, for those of you that are doing it, I know there's a person from Washtenaw here. We were right in the process with ImageSoft. We were right in between Grand Traverse and Washtenaw County. I mean, those were the 3 counties that kind of went at the same time, with Grand Traverse being a little bit ahead of us. Again, we're looking at record retention, electronic signatures, document management, and e-filing. So that's where we are. I know we're running kind of short on time. I did want to, just in closing, say that when we started document management, I don't know what my expectations were, to be honest with you, because I just didn't know enough. But what the result is has far exceeded anything that I had thought it could be. This system is very pliable. It's very usable. We can make changes as employees change. I can put 3 more people into modification, and it's not an issue to reroute that work accordingly. It gives you great reporting capabilities, and so it's greatly exceeded my expectations. The other thing I want to tell anybody who's just starting is implementation and design of this project is hard work. Okay, you got to look down the road, because when you're putting in those tedious hours where you're going over that same function for the 3rd time, or you're debating with referees on whether we're going to use 5 documents or 1, you need to have that focus that it will be better once you get the system in line. You also need to stick with your vision. Okay, there's lots of detractors out there. If your vision is to streamline your process so that you can maximize the efficiency of your employees, don't be worried about Sally, who's been there 25 years, playing solitaire over in the corner. Those decisions or those problems in county government are very difficult. But maintain your vision. The other thing you need to do, I think, is maintain your courage when you're dealing with your boards. Because these things do cost money. They are not necessarily out of the box. There's a lot of work that needs to go into them. And so you need to maintain your courage. And most of all, don't fear change. Judge Rogers said it too. What's the worst that's going to happen? You got the default. If you turn the system on and it didn't work, you still have your paper system. So don't fear the change. And don't be hesitant to go to other counties. I can tell you that Ottawa County, St. Clair County, I think we went to Calhoun even, they were a great benefit to us to see what was out there, to see what other people had put together, and to actually be a springboard for additional ideas that we could use to move forward with the program. So with that, I thank everyone, and I'd be happy to take questions or Roland?
Jack, why did you decide to keep your paper files as well?
That actually happened by default. When I heard St. Clair County was that they had shredded theirs, I was just itching to push the shred button, and we just haven't. Generally in our county, I can tell you that every department has taken a hit, so space was not an issue in the administration building, but I could do it tomorrow. I might do it tomorrow. Any other? Yeah, yes.
If it's any encouragement, in Ottawa County, we did push the shred button.
Did you?
And we cleaned out an entire file room that had been stacked up, looked like yours.
Yeah.
It was awful, and I've never seen the staff desks so clean since we shifted over.
You know, it organizes your employees.
Yeah.
You know, they go to their queue. They know exactly what they have for this function, that function. You know, it just organizes them. Yeah, yes, I'm sorry.
I just started actually as an on-base admin a little while ago, so I wasn't here for that process that you guys went through or when Dave was helping them out. But Barb did, our assistant director Barb did show me where the files used to be.
So you shredded too?
Yes. Court Services has their copy, that's it.
I think what we're waiting for is scale to change the record retention, which I'm on the technology implementation committee, and we had sponsors for the proposed bill, and it wasn't the right sponsor, as I was told. So they're hoping after the election that they can address it at that time.
Well, my discussions with the Friend of the Court Bureau director, they are looking at it. They are going to come out with something. You know, the e-filing is going to happen. I mean, the feds have been doing it for years. It's just the way we're going to go. And so for anybody who's teetering, I mean, we're all going to be there. I can tell you that when Andrew Hagman came in December, he's the director of MISES, when he came in December to talk about making those footers and those other fields uniform, he also told me that OnBase itself, or OnBase, I'm sorry, MISES itself has a document management component to it. They just don't use it. Now, I'm sure it doesn't include workflow. I'm sure it's more of a repository. We didn't go into any depth with it. But at that point, we started talking to him too about, well, why isn't the state taking the lead on this? I mean, why isn't the state saying, here's the system that counties should really look at? Because there's no reason why I can't look at Washtenaw County's OnBase documents. We look at the MISES information. Why shouldn't you be able to, if we have a common file, why shouldn't you be able to look at my documents? And
Make life a lot easier.
it would make life a lot easier. And really, if you're in the 4D world, I'm not a big cloud guy because I'm like Phil, I can't understand it. But it maintains all of our security because everyone is still a dedicated 4D worker. So yes, I'm sorry.
John, I'm curious if you have identified staff in your office to be sort of power users, and if so, have you been able to get support from your county to send them to on-base training and to get them certified from that standpoint so you can do workflow adjustments and things internally?
That's a good question. And we did super users within the office as soon as we got to the point of really moving forward. Once we implemented, we also started a super user program in between departments. so that we would have super users in the clerk's office talking to the prosecutor and the friend of the court. So we have done that. We've only sent 2 people to the system administrator training and the workflow training, thank you. To me, it's insufficient. I think where the other departments, the phase 3 departments, fell down was they all wanted their own administrators to come in and tell them what they needed to do. And the board was really unwilling to hire 5 new people to do that function. But I think it's money well spent for the most part. We are, in Genesee County, we are almost completely contained. Other than Katrina, where she interfaces with other departments, if we change workflow, you're looking at her to my left here. I mean, she's the one that does it. So, yep.
We've got 4 vaults about the size of this room that look something like that room we showed, except you've got a lot more room in that room. On top of that, we're renting 2 double-car garages that are close to the courthouse, and the girls have to go over there and look through in the cold. Those garages aren't heated. I mean, 10 below 0, you're out there trying to find a particular file. My particular big interest, because we don't have that extra space, is getting rid of all that paper if we can, as much of it as we can, and that's, we got 170 years or so of paper laying around. Some of them are fabulous size, and that's where I see this can help us.
It's crazy. Anybody from Wayne County here? Good, I can talk about them. They came in for a site visit, Wayne County did, and the supervisor of their file room, he wanted to go see our file room. And so I showed it to him, and I said, these are all scanned, these ones over here aren't. And he says, well, it kind of looks like ours, but it's all, I think, a 10th. I think he told me it was a 10th of their size. And he says they were partially on base and partially not on base. And I said, well, how do you ever find anything? He says, well, you go to on base first. If it's not there, then I remember that it was filed sometime around the 1st of March. And then I go to those boxes that are stacked up that I think were taken in. They're not even in a file. They're just in boxes waiting to be filed. I think, because of their numbers, I mean, it's a huge issue down there. But I think we all have that problem. I mean, if you're, I don't know how many people or how many cases you have in your county, but, we've reduced our open caseload, partially through OnBase. I think we're down to about 52,000 now, which again helps our incentives for those of you that are worried about funding. I mean, our incentives go up. County appropriations aren't quite at what they would otherwise be. So, I mean, we all have those problems. That's why I think this system, I'll plug ImageSoft because they've just been great partners to work with. But any electronic content management system is going to be a huge improvement over paper. And we have people in the system that are just hell-bent on not moving forward. We have judges who demand that paper. We have referees that demand that paper. But they'll come around. I mean, there's not going to be any choice. So, but, yeah.
And that's the major problem, is that you get a judge, they accept it. The problem is you can issue all these orders, but not all judges read the same orders the same way all judges read.
Not even close.
Well,
It's self-interpretation, and we just got our second notice from Alpena County, from our fire marshal, that if we don't clear the paper out of the building, that he's gonna close the
it
building
down.
down, so fire ants.
I think you do have to be somewhat aware, though, with judges. They're trying to listen. They're trying to see what's happened. They're trying to read who's telling the truth and who isn't.
Careful, Jack, careful.
But there's a lot going on in the bench. If you're in the front of the court office and you have time, it's real easy to pull it up and do what you have to do online. If you have live people and a case going on in front of you, it's not quite that easy. Although I encourage it to happen. So I think there's certainly options. I think it'll get easier.
Some judges do, some judges don't.
Right.
No ones that, I had to update something, update the courtroom one first.
Yeah. So, and right now, the only judges that are using OnBase are our family court judges. We have 5 family court judges, and they all I-sign through
Family
it.
court and arraignments right now, so the magistrates use it. That's
So-
too.
Once you go, you won't go back. But thank you all. I know it's lunchtime. You're probably itching to get out of here. So thank you all very much.